Margaret from Whimsy North, and today I'm going to show you how to make a knoop. A knoop is similar to a bobble stitch, however it's done differently and it looks a little bit different. So one reason I like noops versus a bobble is sometimes bobbles can look a little flat on top, where a knoop gives the bobble looking stitch just a really nice rounded bump. So I'm going to show you my number one trick to knitting noops. Sometimes they can be a little challenging when you're knitting, and a lot of times they're done in lace knitting, but I like to add them to a lot of my designs lately. So my number one trick is using a crochet hook. So I use a crochet hook when I knit my noops so that I don't have the challenge of trying to get all the stitches off of my needle and onto the other. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So typically when I knit noops, I like to knit them on the wrong side of the fabric because for me, they seem to pop through to the back. So I've just knit up a little swatch of stockinette here. This is the right side of my fabric and I just knit all the way across. So now I'm going to turn my work to the back side, which will be the wrong side of my fabric, and this is my purl side. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to purl a couple stitches here. Okay, so I'm going to purl a couple stitches and then I'll show you how I do my knoop. Okay, here's where I'm going to do my knoop. So one of my tricks is, if you're an English style knitter, in order to do a knoop with a crochet hook, you're going to need to switch your yarn to your left hand. So that's actually really important because that's how you're going to grab the yarn. Also, depending on your yarn, sometimes these stitches on your right hand needle can slip out. So I like to kind of pull my needle through to keep my stitches on my needle. Then I grab my crochet hook and I'm going to do this out of my way a little bit so you can see better. Okay, so the first step is to put your crochet hook through the stitch that you're going to create the knoop, grab the yarn and pull it through. Then you're going to do a yarn over. Now, one important note is to keep this yarn very loose. The distance between the stitch and the crochet hook, you want to keep very loose so that you can get it pulled through at the end, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So this would be the stitch and one yarn over. Your pattern will most likely tell you how many yarn overs that you need to do for your knoop. I typically like to do about 4 yarn overs, so that's what I'm going to demonstrate today. So this is one, then I'm going to go back into the same stitch, grab the yarn, pull it up, do another yarn over, go back into the stitch for number 3. Again, I'm pulling up on my hook here. 3, back in for 4, and 4 for the yarn over. Now I have all my yarn overs and my stitches on my hook, and the last thing I'm going to do is go back into the stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through. You always want to end with going through the stitch versus a yarn over. Then lastly, I'm going to loop my yarn around my hook and pull it through all of the loops there. See how I pulled that through? Now, it was easy for me to do because I kept these very loose. If you make this tight and you don't have it loose, it's going to be hard to pull your hook through. So here's my stitch. I'm going to pop this one off my left needle, grab my right needle, and sometimes I just kind of slide it off the bottom and then stick it onto my right needle. Now you can tighten that there, tighten up that stitch there. Okay, so I'm going to show you that one more time. So I'm going to purl over, okay, and now I'm going to bring my needle through so I don't lose those stitches. And again, I'm going to go through the stitch here and pull up, yarn over 1, and do that for 2, and 3, and 4. Then I go back through the stitch to grab the yarn, come under the yarn here. This is kind of the tricky part to remember, is that instead of doing a yarn over, you come from the front and go underneath that yarn to grab it and pull it through. And there you have another Knoop. It's as easy as that. So again, you're going to want to switch your yarn to your left hand. That's one trick, even if you're an English knitter. So if I was knitting English, I would be like this. And then actually another tip is to make sure you bring your yarn to the back. So even though I'm knitting my Knoops on my purl side, I want my yarn in the back. So I'm going to pull my needle through so I don't lose those stitches, and I'm going to show you one more time in kind of some fast motion. So that's 2, 3, 4, and go into the front and pull it through. And there you go. There you have it. And that is the easy trick to knitting Knoops. I'll show you what they look like on the main side of fabric once I get to the end here. So now you'll see these 3 Knoop stitches. They are a little different than a bobble because you can see that they have more of like the they like are all the stitches are kind of going in the same direction here because they're all just loops wrapped around that stitch. So there you have it. That's your easy Knoops.